Welcome to the HealthTech Heroes, where we talk to innovators who are rewriting the DNA of healthcare. Today, we are excited to welcome Dale Ellicott, VP of Growth at Rely Health and an experienced healthcare technology advisor. Dale has built an impressive career spanning nearly 20 years across medical devices, telemedicine, rehabilitation, and healthcare commercialization. His journey began in sports medicine as an athletic trainer with Philadelphia Phillies and evolved through leadership roles at Interactive Metronome, Integrated Learning Systems, and Health South. Most recently, Dale has brought his expertise to companies like Vital, Wheel, and Recover, focusing on improving patient experience through innovative technology. At Rely Health, he is revolutionizing care navigation by combining human empathy with technological efficiency. Additionally, through his advisory practice, he supports health tech startups in developing effective go-to-market and commercializing strategies. Welcome to Health Tech Heroes, Dale.
Thank you, Fasa. I appreciate the invite.
Your career path has taken you from athletic training with the Philadelphia Phillies to leadership in health tech innovation. We are about Health Tech Heroes podcast, and your journey, your origin story is really interesting. I would love to hear how you came about to take this path from a trainer to startup leader.
Yeah, starting out in athletic training, for one, it's not atypical for that to be a fairly short career because it is so time intensive. Most games are played at night or on weekends or both, and most athletic trainers don't really have a lot of time for family and things like that outside of work. So once I met my wife, really was looking for a different role where I could spend some more time and we could have a family. I was recruited to sell a product that was based on some of the therapy tools that I had used in practice. So yeah, it seemed like a pretty natural transition. Actually, there are quite a few athletic trainers out there in the medical sales fields.
You have worked across multiple segments of healthcare technology, from neuro rehabilitation devices to virtual care platforms. What valuable perspective has this diverse experience given you about healthcare's challenges and opportunities today?
Yeah, it's going across different service lines and different types of devices and delivery systems. You know, it really, I think, drives home the point that you need to be very flexible, and your sales process is going to include many different stakeholders. Most of the time, they have competing goals and competing things that they're looking for. So learning how to really figure out what each person is trying to get out of your solution, and then selling the specific things that they're interested in. For example, if you're probably going to have to get a yes from a nurse when I'm selling Rely, a nurse case manager, somebody on that management team, but then also a CFO or maybe a technology CIO, right? All of those people are interested in different things. If I put them all on the same call at the same time, it's probably not going to go very well. So understanding what each person's goal is. And it's not that you're selling one person one thing and one person another thing. It's just highlighting how each feature of your offering might help them.
Coming from different background, you have really identified the customer needs and addressing those needs specifically. That has really helped you, because you have transitioned from one field to the other field, and it seems like it is a seamless transition, as you mentioned earlier. The next question is, you have taken this as your professional mission and you are like deeply involved in this and dedicated to this. What was that one single moment that you remember that is closest to your heart, Dale, that drives you?
Sure. And a lot of it just around healthcare, the system very broken, right? Every time I interact with healthcare, my family interacts with healthcare, there's always challenges, whether it's not understanding bills, whether it's not, you'll get a referral to go for a follow-up appointment, but then no instructions afterwards. There's just so many gaps in healthcare that if there is a seamless process that we can put together, one, things are going to go much more smoothly, but two, it should reduce the cost significantly. So, I mean, there's many components, just like I was saying before, there's many buyers, there's many people across the spectrum that will benefit from just connecting care better.
Awesome. I want to get one layer deeper than that, Dale, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Yeah. Was there a particular experience that you saw a patient suffer? And I'm sure there are a lot of experiences that drive us, motivate us. But is there something that comes to your mind like, hey, you know what? This particular patient could have been better, and we can at Rely Health can address this pain point. Is there something that comes to your mind?
Yeah, it actually goes back way before Rely Health, my first sales role. I was selling a product called Vital Stim. It was electric stim for dysphagia for stroke patients to try and help them get their swallow mechanism back. The FDA had just cleared it, and we would go in and teach continuing education courses. And, I was excited. The FDA just cleared it. We're going to help so many more people. I was just coming out of athletic training where everyone really received, your messaging pretty well. We go in this room and we're teaching the class. I mean, it was, if they could have thrown things at us, they would have. Kind of surprised they didn't, right? And at the end of the course, somebody finally pulled me aside and she goes, look, I get what you guys are trying to do. She's like, but you have to understand our perspective. We have been teaching stroke patients compensatory strategies for our entire career. And now you're going to come in here and tell us that there was actually something we could have been doing, right? And we could have been helping patients instead of watching them wither away because they couldn't eat. They, even their social connections were gone. Most social interactions are happening over meals or beverages. So it was really interesting to hear her perspective from that. I think one that engaged me in, hey, I really can make a difference from the sales capacity and getting new products into people's hands or new solutions, but two, just in the way that you approach it and really understanding that empathy side of care delivery. And that, I think, plays into my sales process a lot.
Yeah. So effectively, that one scenario came to your mind, and it was right at the time when you were transitioning into healthcare. So
Sure.
that's a story that drives you. So you spoke about empathy quite a bit, and I see in your LinkedIn, in your banner, in your messages, everything empathy in healthcare. Can you dive from your perspective? Can you tell me a little bit more on that empathy part, and what are we really missing, and how are you connecting that to the healthcare?
Well, I think it's important to highlight that. One, obviously, we're at, a lot of what Rely does, our largest service line is out of the emergency room. You're usually dealing with people on their worst day, right? So they're struggling, they're stressed out. How can we help them with that is one component of the empathy. But the other part is, I think a lot of technology solutions have lost that piece. Therapists and nurses and doctors, the folks that we're selling to are afraid to lose that piece from healthcare. It's an important component of healthcare, and you can't just throw technology at it, which is why Rely uses that hybrid model. We have humans in place, we have human interaction, but we can automate a lot of the redundant task work that doesn't necessarily need a human or need empathy. Calling somebody with a reminder for an appointment, you don't need a human dialing the phone to do that, right? We always have the ability to escalate to a human if somebody is needing that empathetic touch. But for the most part, there's a lot of transactional work in healthcare sitting on hold, waiting for somebody to pick up that AI can do for us now. So it's a great reminder. We put empathy out there a lot, that word, to remind people like we're not pulling empathy away. We're not pulling human interaction out of healthcare. We're trying to free up more time so that you can spend more time with patients and really build that empathetic connection.
If I understand, you are saying that we will take care of the administrative part so that you can spend more time on empathy as a human being, so that you're not just filling out forms, and you can spend being empathetic to patients. At Rely Health, we are focusing on care navigation. Again, that combines human empathy and technology efficiency. Can you walk me through how this solution works in an ideal world? I believe the USP that you have is the empathy part with the health technology, but I'm sure there is pretty heavy emphasis on the technology part too. Can you just walk me through how it works in an ideal situation?
Sure. So what we're going for is just trying to automate any redundant task work, any work where it's just not possible to hire enough humans. So there is an FTE capacity issue in healthcare across the board. And a lot of the reason for that is people are doing things that AI can now do for them. We can free those people up and then not have to hire more FTEs to do the amount of work. And the tough thing, like out of the emergency room, is that, they'll be discharging 50, 100 patients, some of the larger EDs, and only 10% of those patients really have care navigation and have somebody help connect them to the next step in care and make sure that their healthcare journey goes smoothly. So we are able to reach out to all of the patients that the current case management team can't reach and interact with them, gather their information, make sure that they're getting connected to that next level of care, because AI is somewhat limitless in the effort it can put out, right? We can put out thousands of AI calls and just have one human there to escalate any of the necessary calls to.
So you're saying after the care is given, there is only 10% of the patients who are reached out to. Now we can make it from 10% to 100% because of the Rely Health.
Yep. Yeah, not quite 100%, but we're getting really close. We're in the 90s.
So where does Rely Health come in? What are the boundaries essentially? When does it come in and when does it stop when it comes to patient care? Navigation.
Sure. That's the interesting thing about our model is we can go full service. So we can hire a navigator and actually place them in your care setting in the emergency room, and they'll meet and greet patients face to face. If you already have a team that does that, we can do what we call a remote virtual application. So that person that's on the ground meet and greet the patient, figure out what they need, and then upload that to our back office team. Our back office team will schedule appointments, get any diagnostics scheduled, any of that stuff that the patient needs to do once they leave the hospital, get them scheduled for it, but also make sure they attend and make sure they get scheduled. And the other component is then obviously the agentic AI, our conversational AI can call the patient once they get home the next morning, make sure they're able to pick up their prescriptions, make sure their experience went well, any surveys that you need to engage in, things like that. So it's really pretty broad. It's more a matter of we want to pick up where your capacity leaves off. Some hospitals have nothing. Other hospitals have a very robust program where maybe they just need some AI aids to help make them a little bit more efficient, but we can run the whole gamut. And that's really the biggest part of the sales process, is figuring out where the gaps are and how we can fill in.
Okay. And this will be customized to each of the practice or each of the hospital systems that require your services, including putting a human on the ground.
Yeah, definitely do that.
As soon as the patient steps into the hospital, Rely Health can start helping the patient. Out of curiosity, does it begin with setting up appointments even before the patient step in, or it is after the patients start the care?
Yep. It depends. When we work with physician practices and things like that. So we have a client that we're bringing on board now in the oncology space, and we're going straight from helping them get the appointment scheduled to getting all the pre-testing and diagnostics done, making sure they can attend the appointment, and then following up after them with any follow-up scheduling and things like that. So it's really beginning to end. We have a unique application we just launched at Arrowhead Regional Medical Center where we've replaced their entire call center. About 90% of their calls are fully handled by AI now, and it's routing, it's scheduling, it's escalating. If it senses that we've programmed it to sense, if you say you have chest pain, it will ask you to call 911 because it's not capable of taking care of that, but it's obviously emergency. So AI is doing a lot for us right now, but yeah, beginning to end, anywhere you need it, we can build a workflow for it.
That's fantastic. Understanding over the call that a patient might be in a bigger trouble than they're expressing is something that is, I totally see that AI doing that really well too. So you have said on a LinkedIn page, there is a 10 to 15x increase in outreach to the patients. And how does this outreach impact patient outcomes?
One of the biggest things it does is it allows clinical teams to spend more face time with their patients. So as soon as one of our physicians that we work with quite a bit out in Oregon, he calls Rely the easy button, right? As soon as he figures out what that patient needs to do to discharge, He calls in our navigator, he hits that easy button, our navigator comes in and takes care of all that for him so that he can spend time explaining to the patient what's going on. So it's really that 10 to 15x comes from offloading a lot of redundant tasks. Had Rely not been there, somebody would have had to pick up the phone, maybe call a facility, try and schedule an appointment, call a transfer service or a ride service, get them transferred. All they have to do is hit the button and Rely comes in and it offloads all that work so that they can continuously see more patients.
With this type of remarkable work, I'm sure you hear a lot of stories and successful stories and wins on daily basis. What is that one win that is closest to your heart?
One of the biggest successes I think we've seen is when we launched the agentic AI for that call center. Obviously, one of our biggest concerns is it going to handle high priority, high risk calls well? And a mother that was just had a newborn got home, noticed she was having some major complications. She called the AI. It was in Spanish, so had to be translated as well. And very high risk situation where the AI was able to talk to her, gather all her information and get her transferred over to a nurse hotline, which then ended up escalating and getting her to the hospital. So the idea that we were able to build something that functioned exactly the way it should, even in a high risk situation, to get a patient where they needed to be, that was pretty exciting for us.
That's a beautiful example for two reasons. First is, of course, that it worked the way it was planned to work, be highly efficient, and that saved a life. And the second thing also, if calling a regular system had they not reached a Spanish-speaking person, the treatment could have been delayed. And now I did not realize that aspect of it, that the AI can speak pretty much any language you want to speak. And has this tangibly changed the practices that are bringing in, is a little bit more inclusive in bringing in patients and treating them with more equality?
Yeah, I think from a practice perspective, it again is an efficiency thing, right? Like when you're hiring a front office staff for your clinic, you can't hire, you could get lucky and hire somebody that speaks all languages, but it's pretty unlikely, right? So, there's again just a limit to what you can do with just FTEs. And that's a beautiful thing that we get with it, expanding technology. And we can use that. Anybody can use AI just from their computer. So the ability to be able to translate and communicate with patients that way, it's pretty amazing what technology is going to be helping with.
Well, it just increases the level of follow-up and the personalization to non-native speakers. And it is also, you're not only working on healthcare aspect of it, but also in the inclusive part of healthcare, which is so critical these days. So you do advise practices and companies that are in neuro rehabilitation and virtual care. What pitfalls do you see healthcare startups encounter when commercializing their innovations?
They assume, almost everybody does, that if they have a great product, everybody's going to want it. And it's when I first came to Rely, that the biggest thing is that people need to like you and people need to trust you. And then they'll take a look at your product, right? And then your product can perform. When I was an athletic trainer, plenty of times bought maybe an equal product or lesser product, or paid more for a product because I liked the people I was buying it from. I knew I could trust them. I knew if something happened to the product, they would be there to fix it. So building that rapport with people is really important. Yeah, across advising everywhere, you have to have an amazing product. The product can't fail, but that's not guaranteeing success.
Yeah. Building trust and consistency is probably one of the factors that is very important, especially in the healthcare area. It's because margins for failure is that much lower. And what kind of challenges have you faced when you have tried to change things? Because there is like one instance going back to your start in the healthcare where they said walked you aside and asked you, we could have done so much for the patients, but we did not. That is a very positive thing. I'm sure you have also received things that were there was a pushback from patients or the payers or the clinicians. What kind of pushback have you seen and what are the challenges? How do you address it?
Yeah, one of the biggest eye-opening moments, I think, early on when I was selling neuro rehab devices, I was selling to an inpatient rehab hospital and was just young in my career trying to sell features and benefits and, oh, it can do this and it can do that. And the rehab director there took me kind of back down a hallway and opened a closet door. And there had to be hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of equipment in a closet. And she said, these all had great features and benefits, right? But the companies weren't there to support them, or they broke down, or they didn't give us enough education so that we could get the most out of them. So they end up in this closet. Right. And that was a very eye-opening moment for me. And it goes back to what I said earlier, like no matter how great your product is, if you're not a great company and you're not supporting your clients from the beginning all the way through the life cycle, that's why we have such a big focus on account management and customer success here with Rely. That's one of the biggest things I wanted to focus on building, was making sure that, we didn't just get a client for a year and then they fade away, that they're going to be a client for life and it's going to be a product they can continue using and trusting.
That's awesome. So in your outreach, you are very purposeful and you want to reach out and build relationships that last, not just keep the revenue coming in and churning out. So that's an excellent model to build trust and do right by the patients.
Yeah, it's a big mistake a lot of startups make, is hiring sales team, and not having the support post-sales to be able to sustain clients. Some of the companies I've been with, they hire 8 or 10 salespeople just like that because they raised some money and they had nothing on the back end after the sale was made to support it. So while they are signing contracts, none of the clients were being stood up. None of the clients were happy or successful. So it really, really hurt the business more than it helped it. So I would say that's a big thing that you have to watch for as a startup, is growing at the right sustainable pace that you can support your clients.
So as a thought leader in this space, you have spent a significant time in health tech and you deeply understand it. What are the emerging trends? Where do you think the industry is going to go in next 5 years? And what do you think is going to be the biggest impactful thing from your perspective in your industry?
I think continuously AI is going to get better and better and more, even just broader use. There's so much that could be done with AI right now that we're just not sure how to apply it in healthcare. We want to make sure it's safe. We want to make sure it works with the EHR. We want to make sure all these things happen. Other industries are years ahead of us already compared to healthcare, but there's a lot at stake in healthcare, right? The interesting thing in healthcare is the standard that technology is held to as compared to what is currently happening with maybe just human delivery, right? Technology has to be 100% perfect. And we're compared against 100% perfect versus what is currently happening today, right? So right now in the Rely example, we can only help 10% of patients schedule follow-up appointments, right? If we can only get you to 85, that looks like a failure because we're not at 100. And it's like, well, you're forgetting it. We started at 10%, right? So it's a lot of times it's really measuring those KPIs, finding ways to measure those and using technology to measure those so that more people are willing to adopt the technology that's out there. And I think AI can help with that a lot. AI is very good at scraping these data sets, putting the information together if it's prompted appropriately.
No, that's a great point that you bring up. We tend to compare perfect AI to the current AI and say that, hey, it is failing in like 3% times. So it's not perfect. So I'm not very comfortable using it. But without using it, we are probably failing 30% or whatever that number is in many cases. So that is the metric that we need. And sometimes it is a little hard to tell people that you have been failing 30% of the time and still make them happy so that they are your clients and adapt it, right? So it kind of becomes a little bit tricky there.
Yeah, those could be tricky conversations.
I want to get into the second layer of the balance between technology and human connection. And I realize that human empathy is important when we are training AIs or even interacting with patients. As you said, you do place a human being in the hospital floor if they don't already have a team. And this is the current situation. But as we go into 5 years' time, how do we make sure that that certain amount of balance still remains where there is a human interaction? What should we do now to ensure that it's not completely AI and there is no human interaction at all, because that's the most efficient way to get from A to B.
Well, and that's the approach we've been taking, is this hybrid co-pilot approach, if you will, always making sure there is a human available. What we're finding out, though, is even though there is a human in the background, if people are introduced to the concept, so if your physician, let's say, for example, tells you that, hey, I'm going to have my agent call you tomorrow and see how you're doing. If you need anything, you just tell the agent and it'll escalate up to me, right? So it's that explanation of, I am using this tool and this tool helps me be more efficient and helps me check in on you more regularly, and also having the option to opt out of it, I think, is a big thing. We have patients that will spend 10 or 15 minutes talking to our AI agents, a lot of elderly population. We get that question all the time. Well, will senior citizens use it? And they chat it up all the time. They'll have full out conversations. We'll take those notes. We'll forward them on to their care team. So it's very interesting, the adoption of it. I think the key is letting people know that it is AI, announcing that it is AI, and not trying to trick people into talking to AI instead of a human. I don't know. For me, if it's more efficient and I can get my problem solved more quickly, if I'm working with AI, I'm perfectly happy to work with AI. If it's just as much of a struggle, or if it's bad AI and it can't listen to me and keeps asking me to repeat things, yeah, of course I'm going to be frustrated. So I think a lot of it has to do with quality and the capabilities of the AI, and the idea that it's being introduced and that you can still reach a human if needed.
That is really key. Sometimes, even in advertising, we don't know the difference between AI and if it is real. And even if you have a doubt whether it's an AI or it's real, we get put off a little bit. I think just being transparent that this is AI is going to be more and more acceptable in the future. And still we can get that empathy part right. And knowing that there is a human behind it is a great point. So coming to our almost last question, last but two question, for the healthcare leaders and people who are getting into this, or entrepreneurs who are getting into health tech industry. We are trying to sell something which is non-personal, essentially, to automate everything that you have, but we are still trying to build on personal level a trust. There is a kind of a countering forces. It's like, hey, we want to build trust, but we are also having AI do that for us instead of human beings. How do we navigate this? What should the leaders should be thinking right now so that we implement this in the most empathetic way?
Yeah, I'd say one part is definitely taking a team approach. Right? I see it so many times where an entrepreneur has a great idea, builds a great product, but they don't use that collaborative team approach, and they don't surround themselves with people that are willing to tell them if they're wrong or if they need to change their messaging or things like that. So, I think my approach has always been, if I'm getting on a call to present something to you, I want multiple people there with me from my team so that we have different perspectives. If there's clinicians on the call, you should have clinicians on your team. Right? If you have doctors on the call, then you should have your medical director show up. So I think it's making sure that you're speaking to everybody on their level and not just coming in as the sales guy with the new cool thing or the inventor with the new cool thing. How could you not want it? So I think that's a big part of the challenge, is making sure that you can speak the language of the person you're talking to, use all their vernacular and make sure they understand it, but also understand where they're coming from. So I think the empathy piece is always going to be there, right? Yes, we're replacing some of the task work with AI, and in some cases you might replace all of the work, but explaining why you're doing that and having a good reason to do that sometimes might even make you reflect upon, hey, is this a good product, right? Is this a good offering for the marketplace, or is it just something cool that I built? Did technology do a better job than what a purely human or a hybrid approach can do?
Wonderful. Essentially meet them where they are and have a diverse team that can speak multiple languages like your audience would, so that meet where they are, so that we have this connection and making sure that they understand what we are trying to do and it's coming from the right place.
It's important that it aligns with their needs, and you have to be able to recognize when your solution doesn't work for somebody. There's plenty of times where I've referred them to a different product or a different company because I didn't feel like we were the best fit for that prospect. And I've referred folks to competitors before too. That honesty component, I think that's where sales went wrong a while back, and I think it's recovering now. And that's where that trust and rapport building comes in. Recognizing what your product does and not just trying to sell anything to anybody is a very important component of success, especially in the technology space.
Thank you for saying that, Dale, that you have actually recommended a competitor's program or a product just because their product might have been a better fit. And I think that perspective is such an important thing in healthcare. We cannot really overstate it. Truly appreciate that. As we come to the end of our podcast recording, you have 90 seconds. If you want to take 4 minutes, that's okay too. What would be your advice or something that you want to reiterate that we did not get deep enough or anything? And the question is open.
Yeah, I just go back to, it's a health tech conversation. So, selling in healthcare is tough. And a lot of it isn't your typical sales process. You can't dupe somebody into buying something in healthcare and end up being successful. It just doesn't happen. It's a continuous process that you really have to, one, make sure that you're fully honest and everything is on the level throughout the whole sales process. It's also a long process. It's usually 9 to 12 months to sell to a hospital, sometimes even a lot more depending on how big of a solution it is. And your client's needs can change throughout that process. So continuously checking back in, making sure you're solving today's problem and not the problem you started talking about 6 months ago is an important aspect of selling into healthcare now too. So it's a different approach that you need to take. It's not just, go get your sales school training somewhere and sell features and benefits. And there's a lot to it. And you're typically going to have, like we mentioned before, 5 to 10 different buyers in any sales process. And you have to make sure that your product is aligned with each one of their initiatives, even if some of them are conflicting, right? You have the CFO who's just looking to save money, and then you have a nurse who's just trying to spend more time with patients. Those two things might not be the same talk track, even though your solution can help with both. So understanding who you're talking to, making sure you identify what their goals are, and making sure there's good alignment. Don't sell around people who may not be your advocates, because they will end up crashing whatever product you sell in the long run. It's very easy for a few detractors, once you stand a product up, to reduce the utilization or make sure a pilot's not successful. So I would say, make sure you address each person's concern and get the buy-in. Don't avoid the challenging situations. Make sure you address them head on, and that'll lead to good longevity of your product with that client.
Thank you very much for explaining the complexity, Dale, in 2 minutes. That was a great summary. And with that, thank you very much, Dale, for being with us today at HealthTech Heroes. I truly appreciate the time.
Thanks for having me on the call.